ישבה בדד העיר רבת ים, הייתה כאלמנה רבתי בגויים, שרתי במדינות, הייתה למס. One of the painful questions that face the Jewish people today is, are we becoming two different Jewish civilizations? For generations, Israel and the diaspora have understood themselves as two branches of one family. We have celebrated one another's triumphs, mourned one another's losses, and believed that despite our differences, our destinies were intertwined. But today, many Jews feel that bond is fraying. Since October 7th, many diaspora Jews have experienced an awakening of solidarity with Israel, unlike anything they have ever felt before. They have marched, donated, prayed, advocated, and grieved. They have watched anti-Semitism surge around them and have discovered that the fate of Jews everywhere remains deeply interconnected. And at the same time, many Israeli Jews have struggled to understand the realities of Jewish life outside of Israel. Living as a Jewish majority creates assumptions very different from those of Jews who live as religious minorities. Likewise, many diaspora Jews struggle to understand the daily pressures of raising children, serving in the military, and building a society under constant security threats. Neither perspective is complete without the other, and yet our disagreements have become louder than our shared story. We argue over politics, we argue over religion, we argue over democracy, peace, settlements, the role of courts, conversion, pluralism, and the meaning of Jewish identity itself. And these arguments matter because they touch the deepest questions of who we are. The arrival of Tisha B'Av, the 9th day of the month of Av, invites us to think more deeply about our situation. The Mishnah teaches that 5 calamities befell our ancestors on this day. The first temple was destroyed. The second temple was destroyed. The decree was issued that the generation of the wilderness would not enter the promised land. Beitar fell during the Bar Kokhba revolt. Jerusalem itself was plowed under. Many of us struggle to connect emotionally with a temple that disappeared nearly 2,000 years ago. We've never seen it. We've never offered sacrifices there. The Jerusalem we know today is vibrant, noisy, alive. Why should we sit on the floor and dim the lights, chant lamentations, and fast over ruins from another age? Well, I think the answer is because Judaism has never understood Tisha B'Av to be simply about stones. It has always been about souls. As Jewish history unfolded, Tisha B'Av became the day upon which later tragedies were remembered as well. Expulsions, persecutions, crusades, and countless moments when the Jewish people experienced profound loss. Yet our rabbis did something remarkable. Instead of asking and focusing on who destroyed us, they asked what destroyed us. And their answer appears in the Talmud. The first temple was destroyed because of idolatry, bloodshed, and sexual immorality. But the second temple, it was destroyed because of sinat chinam, baseless hatred. Now think about how extraordinary that diagnosis is. Rome had legions, weapons. Rome had overwhelming military power. And yet the rabbis refused to place the blame solely on Rome. Instead, they dared to ask what had become broken inside the Jewish people themselves. They understood something timeless. Civilizations rarely collapse only because of enemies. They collapse because something essential has eroded within. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel once wrote that few are guilty, but all are responsible. And those words echo across the centuries. Tisha B'Av is not interested in assigning blame. It is interested in cultivating responsibility. Every generation inherits brokenness, and the question is whether we will pass it on unchanged. The Kabbalists offer us another powerful image. According to the mystical teaching of Rabbi Isaac Luria at the beginning of creation, divine light poured into vessels that could not contain its brilliance. The vessels shattered, and the world we inhabit is made of fragments. Scattered throughout creation are holy sparks just waiting to be gathered. This is known as Shivarat HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels. And our purpose is Tikkun Olam, repairing the world by gathering those scattered sparks through acts of justice, compassion, holiness, and love. Now, I notice something beautiful and profound here. The rabbis begin with a destroyed temple, and the mystics begin with a broken universe. And both traditions tell us the same thing. Brokenness is real, but brokenness is never the end of the story. Repair is. So let's ask an important Tisha B'Av question about the relationship between diaspora and Israeli Jews, and between Jews of different religions and political movements. How are we having these arguments? Now, I recently heard a Jewish education expert talk about the different ways to argue. Debate, for example. Here, a person tries to persuade. One-sided ideas are presented. Relationships are secondary or absent. It is rooted in rhetoric and evidence, and the goal is to win. Another type of argument is negotiation. A person seeks agreement. Both sides compromise. Relationships are instrumental. This practice is rooted in interests and outcomes, and it ends with a settlement. And then there is the unique Jewish practice of machloket. In machloket, the question is, what truth emerges when we listen deeply to both sides? Machloket assumes that reality itself is layered. Machloket seeks deeper truth. Multiple viewpoints are held as valid. Relationship is part of the goal, rooted in covenant and shared values, and can end without a resolution. If the Second Temple was destroyed not because Jews disagreed, but because they allowed disagreement to become sinat hinam, baseless hatred, it's worth considering that the opposite of sinat hinam is not agreement. Perhaps it is ahavat hinam, a love for the Jewish people that survives disagreement, as in the description of machlokets. To love another Jew does not mean we never criticize. It means we refuse to let criticism become contempt. It means we remember that before we are political opponents, we are members of the same covenant. Perhaps Tisha B'Av is asking us whether we have begun speaking about one another more harshly than our enemies do. And that should frighten us. The Jewish people have always been strongest when our diversity became our strength rather than our weakness. The temple in Jerusalem belonged to every Jew. Pilgrims came from Judea, from the Galil, from Babylonia and Alexandria, speaking different languages, bringing their different customs, and carrying different hopes. The temple did not erase those differences. It gave them a common center. Now, we live in a time of extraordinary division. People speak past one another instead of listening. Political disagreement is becoming personal contempt. Social media rewards outrage more than understanding. Families stop speaking over elections. Communities fracture over ideology. Even with the Jewish world, disagreements over Israel, religious practice, identity, and politics can become so bitter that they threaten the very relationships that make community possible. The language of sinat hinam feels painfully contemporary. Now, today, we no longer have that temple. Instead, our shared center must become something else: our covenant, our history, our Torah, and our responsibility for one another. The state of Israel is an extraordinary miracle of Jewish history. And the flourishing of Jewish life throughout North America and around the world is also an extraordinary miracle. Neither diminishes the other. Each enriches the Jewish story in ways that the other cannot. We need Israelis who remind us what Jewish sovereignty means. And we need diaspora Jews who remind us what Jewish pluralism has learned over the centuries of living among others. We need one another. The world of tikkun repair begins by refusing to see Israel and the diaspora as competitors for the soul of Judaism. Instead, they are two voices in the same ancient conversation. If Tisha B'Av teaches that a temple can fall because Jews forget how to live together, then perhaps its deepest lesson for our generation is this: the third temple, or whatever form redemption ultimately takes, will not be built by stones alone. It will be built when Jews across oceans, denominations, political parties, and cultures rediscover that we belong to one another, not because we think alike, but because we share one history, one covenant, and one future, and because we know how to disagree and stay in community. Then repairing the world can begin with repairing the places where God already dwells: our relationships, our families, our congregations, our neighborhoods, our own hearts. This week, as Tisha B'Av approaches, perhaps we each might ask a simple question: what is in need of repair in my corner of the world? Is there someone waiting for an apology? Is there someone I have quietly written off? Is there resentment I have carried for too long? Tisha B'Av is meaningful only if mourning becomes motivation, only if memory becomes responsibility, only if our tears become action. Beautiful thing about Jewish tradition is that Tisha B'Av never has the last word. Almost immediately after this darkest day, we begin counting 7 weeks of consolation. The first Haftorah begins with the words, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, comfort, comfort my people. Judaism insists that despair is never permanent. Hope is not naive optimism. Hope is disciplined faithfulness. Hope is choosing repair even when repair seems impossible. Hope is planting trees whose shade we may never enjoy. Hope is believing that one act of kindness can interrupt generations of hatred. Hope is trusting that every spark we recover brings the world a little closer to wholeness. Yes, the temple may have fallen. The vessels may have shattered. The world may still be broken. But God has entrusted us with the sacred work of repair. Every blessing we recite, every child we teach, every hungry person we feed, every lonely soul we welcome, every difficult conversation we enter with humility, every moment we choose compassion over contempt. These are the stones from which the next temple is built. May this Tisha B'Av remind us that mourning is not the opposite of hope. It is hope's beginning. And may we have the courage to become repairers of what is broken, gatherers of the scattered sparks, builders of sacred community, and partners with God in bringing healing to our fractured world. Ken Yehi Ratzon.